Yeah, hi, it's me again. I'm here with another tale. True tale, actually. In fact, all these stories I tell are true. They really happened. Uh, this tale I'm about to tell, I kind of call it a day at the beach. Um, I was in the Navy. I was stationed in Imperial Beach. And I told another story earlier about Imperial Beach, but that was my second time back there. This time, I was just finishing up graduating from communication technician school. That's what I was in the Navy. It was somewhere around March of 1958. It was a nice day. It was one of those days where it's kind of windy and it's cool. But if you get out of the wind and you're in the sun, it's pretty nice. Okay? That's the kind of day it was. But it was partly cloudy, and the sun would go behind the cloud, and it'd be cold, and then it'd come out again, it'd be warm. Three friends and I decided we'd go to the beach. We went down there and wearing, I was probably a seaman apprentice at that time. That's really, that's certainly not very high up the chain of command. Wearing Navy issue swim shorts. That's all I had. Three of us decided we'd go to the beach, and we did. We got down there, and the sea was really rough and choppy. And there were signs posted saying, "Stay out of the water." I looked out to the ocean, and off to my right I could see a whole bunch of kelp just rising and falling on the waves. And these waves, it was like I said, it was windy, and the wind causes waves. And these waves were coming in. They were high, they were choppy, they were fast. They were coming in one right after another. And anyway, I saw all this kelp rising and falling with the waves, and I thought to myself, boy, I'd sure hate to get caught up in that. We laid our blankets down, and I walked over to the water's edge. I don't know what my buddies were doing. I walked into the water, just up to my ankles. I was just wanting to get my feet wet. That's all I wanted. And this wave came in, and it came up to about my knees, and then another one came in right on its heels, and it started going out, and suddenly it felt like two hands grabbed me by the ankles, jerked my feet out from under me, and I was flat on my back and being pulled out to sea. I remember seeing another wave coming in, and I had just had time to take a deep breath, and the wave crashed over me, and I was caught in the undertow, and I was being drug out to sea, and I didn't even intend to go in the water at all. I just didn't have a choice. And anyway, the bottom of the sandy bottom felt like it was corrugated, and my butt just kept bouncing along on these little ridges, and I'm being drug out to sea. I fought. I was fighting, thrashing, doing everything I could to get loose. I was a pretty good swimmer. I've swum all my life. Swam all my life, whatever. I couldn't get out of that undertow. And all of a sudden, this kelp just came, all of a sudden it just went whomp on me. You can only hold your breath so long. And there came a time when I just couldn't hold it any longer. Have you ever tried holding your breath as long as you can? You can only do it so long. And finally I was aware, I opened my eyes. I didn't like to do that in salt water, but I opened my eyes and I just see all the bubbles going up. Still kept going out to sea. Suddenly, there's this white light all around me. And I remember thinking, the sun must have come out from behind a cloud. And this big, it was beautiful actually. It was white, shining white, on the top of the water. But in the water where I was, the water turned this brilliant green. All of a sudden, I heard a voice, and the voice said, "Relax." And there's no way I can describe this voice. It was a command, and yet it wasn't mean. I quit thrashing. I may have the sequence here a little out of order. That may have happened before I let the breath out. I don't know. I don't remember. But all of a sudden, I remember I was off to the side, and I could see my body lying about a foot off the bottom of the ocean, just parallel with the sand. My knees, my feet bent at the knees. It just bent down. My body was straight and then bent at the knees. I wasn't scared. I said, "Oh, that's me. That's my body." Then all of a sudden, I was back in my body. And I felt, remember, I'm caught up in this kelp. And suddenly the kelp just slid off me. It was weird. It just let go of me. And my head, which was parallel to by the sand, suddenly raised like this. And then I started going up. I broke the surface of the water. I don't know how long I'd been under the water, quite a while, I think. And by that I mean maybe 5 minutes. When I broke up, I was in some of the roughest, most tumultuous seas you've ever seen. And I broke the surface, and I was in a trough. I was between waves. Now the waves weren't coming in rows like they normally do. It was choppy. It was like the waves were coming in from every direction. They were headed towards the shore, but there was also breaking on the sides of me. And I was in this trough, and as the water came in, I floated to the top, and all I could see when I reached the crest was ocean. Nothing out there but ocean. And then the next thing I knew, I was back down in the trough. And when the next wave came in where I was raised up again, I spun around in the water. Now mind you, I broke surface. I'd lost all my air, but when I broke the surface, there was no water in my lungs. I could see land, and I was so far out that I could see people, but they looked like tiny little ants. And the pier that was there, I was so far out beyond that pier, it was strange. Well, I started swimming back to shore. And like I said, I was a pretty good swimmer. I've swum all my life. Swam. Who knows? Anyway, I couldn't, the outgoing current was so rough, I couldn't make any progress. And so I don't know where I learned it from, but I decided, well, and I could tell that I was drifting south, going towards Mexico. And I decided I'll swim towards Mexico and I'll angle into shore. I started swimming, and I swam, and I swam, and I swam. And the technique worked. I got closer and closer to shore, and pretty soon I was maybe 100 yards out, maybe, and waves were breaking. And I remember I body surfed into land. And as I got to the shoreline, I reach my hands out and I'm trying to stand up and I can't because the waves are pulling me back out. And I remember having this panicky thought, the sea's not going to let me go. And the sand was just dissolving underneath my fingers. And then another wave came in and pushed me up a little further, and I was able to get up. I'd been swimming so long, my legs were shaking, my arms were shaking, and I was a young sailor then. I was in pretty good shape. And anyway, it took me about an hour to walk back to where my buddies were. I was cold. I got there. My buddies looked up at me and one of them said, "Where in the hell have you been?" And I didn't know how to answer him. And so I said, "I went for a walk." I never told anyone about that. Like I said in other stories, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't understand what happened. I'd never heard about being caught up in a white light. Now, unlike most people who've had near-death experiences, I didn't get into heaven. I always kind of think of myself as God's reject, kind of like when you go fishing, you catch a fish too small, you throw it back. Yeah, I got thrown back. I don't know why. Nobody said, I didn't have I hear all these stories about people who were interviewed by Jesus, and Jesus gave them the option and said, you can either stay here or go back, or, I've read these stories. That didn't happen to me. I didn't have a choice. Next thing I know, I was in my body. Now, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but I have wondered, since recalling the story, because I buried it. It came back to me when I was writing memoirs, stories of my life and the spiritual experiences that I've had. And one day I'm sitting there writing, and this story, this event, it's not really a story, it's true. This event began to unfold. It was the first time I thought about it in maybe 40 years. I never thought about it. And it began, and as I'm typing on my computer, the story is coming, and I'm beginning to cry because I remembered it. And I bawled like a baby. And the story revealed itself. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm grateful. My life's been kind of hard. And my fault, I'm not blaming anybody, but at the time I was going through my trials and my troubles and my tribulations, I talked about being depressed and having bouts of depression. When I recall that story, I realized that every trial, every tribulation, everything I've ever gone through was a blessing. I shouldn't have gone through them. Because I was sent back, I have 4 wonderful children, one of whom died quite a few years ago. He was a Marine, died in a helicopter crash. I have these kids. I have kids that shouldn't be here. I've had great-grandchildren. It's been a wonderful life. It doesn't matter what happens to me now, because everything I've experienced has been a blessing. That's my story. I hope you liked it. It's true. Every bit of it is true. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.